First up is Trap, which is the latest experience, and I'm putting that in air quotes, from M. Night Shyamalan. And I will fully acknowledge I am not in the target audience for some of his better work. For example, I've never actually seen the entirety of The Sixth Sense because I was told I would never sleep again if I saw it, and I believe the people who told me. And, that is probably one of his best known films, so haven't seen The Sixth Sense. I did end up eventually seeing things like Unbreakable and Signs, and the nubbly hands in Signs freaked me out for sure. I have actually seen The Last Airbender in theaters, which was an experience I never want to repeat again. I've seen Glass and Knock at the Cabin, but anyway, Trap. I saw the trailer for Trap and I went, oh, you know what? Actually, this looks pretty cool. The idea of it being, a one location escape thriller film, because this is all given away in the trailers. Josh Hartnett plays this character who is a serial killer, it seems, called The Butcher. And he is at a concert with his daughter, played by Ariel Donahue. And I think the most important thing to note about this is that the concert is for a character called Lady Raven, who is played by Suleika Shyamalan. So this movie is just, it's a trap to the audience because it is forcing you to go to basically a montage of what would be a concert of his daughter's music. And yes, this is her actual music, and not to knock her music, it's not terrible, but it's also, nowhere near the quality of the way that this concert portrays the fandom of her, right? She's basically a comp to a Taylor Swift type character, it feels like. Somebody who the Butcher's daughter is so obsessed with that, of course he wants to win Dad of the Year and take her to this thing. So keep in mind, M. Night Shyamalan is making this film for his daughter, which it is the definition of nepotism, but at the same time I was like, yeah, sure, I guess if I was in that position, I would do the same for my kid. I don't know. So saw the trailer, the idea being, and they set this up and they tell you all of this. They know that this Butcher character is going to be at this Lady Raven concert, and so they are using it to trap him in. They have all these contingency plans to kind of sift through and interrogate all the men at the concert because they know that the serial killer is a man. I was like, all right, I could see this working potentially. And what we got though, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to give too much of it away, although, again, the trailer probably actually gives the best part away. The things I will say are, Josh Hartnett is doing an okay job, but I think it's sort of the framing and the direction and definitely the dialogue. The dialogue is the biggest issue I have with this film. It is so expositional. So the way Josh Hartnett talks to his daughter's character, she's a teenager. He's talking to her like she's an 8-year-old. I feel like this is a good, comp basically for the way M. Night Shyamalan is treating his audience, where he's talking to us like 8-year-olds. There's so much exposition. There's also exposition of things that are happening. We can't even see them. There's no visual representation for them, but this character, the Butcher, is hearing them through, plot devices and all this stuff. And I'm like, this is such weak storytelling where it's like, oh yes, this thing that none of you will see is a major impact on the story. So we're going to tell you it in a way that doesn't require us to actually figure out a creative solution to demonstrate it. We're just going to sort of shove it down your throat. So not for me. And then everything potentially interesting was already explored in the trailer. It does not live up to any sort of expectations that trailer might have set. I will give credit to that trailer editor. Good job, person, because you lured me in with a trap to see this terrible experience. There are points where I was like, ooh, is this going to be ridiculous and campy? And it started to flirt with that, but could not commit. Again, so much of this is part of me is I get it. You're doing this for your daughter. He gives her way too big of a role. That is also, some of it is acting. And I'm like, she's definitely trying to be a musician. Please stop trying to make her an actor. Some of it is just tech logic that doesn't make sense. Please. And the things I wanted the most out of this was the murdery serial killer stuff, because I was like, this is a cool idea, that he is stuck at this thing. How do we see him outsmart, outwit, whatever, if he's gotten away with all these things this long? But no, that is the one thing we are not going to give us background and info on. We're just going to focus on the things that just do not matter or are not interesting in any way, shape, or form to me as an audience member. Part of me thinks a few people are going to go see this because they're like, there's no way that this is real, and a movie like this kind of gets away with that. And I feel like some of M. Night Shyamalan's other films being like, ooh, we're so twisty, get away with that, and they lure you in. And to his credit, his first few films did such a good job that his name to this day does make you perk up a little and be like, what does he have in store for this? And I'm going to tell you, probably a bad time. I think even if I was in his target audience, I would be disappointed by the structure of this film and the dialogue and all this stuff. There's absolutely nothing clever about it. And when M. Night Shyamalan's career has had good moments, it's because they are clever. This one, devoid of that. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Thankfully, the other thing I have this week is excellent. It is a new film called DìDi, and it is from director Sean Wong, who did Nai Nai and Waipo, which was a documentary short, which I absolutely loved, which was nominated for an Oscar this year. So Sean is having quite a year. It stars Isaac Wang, no relation, playing a character called Wang Wang. He's a 13-year-old boy in 2008 in Fremont, California, and this is taking us through his summer. And as someone who comes from the Bay Area and grew up, and I'm a little older than Sean, but like grew up close to that era, I'm like, oh, this is basically also in many ways a documentary. Like, he does such a good job of capturing the culture and especially the online culture, because this was, the verge of, I was doing a bunch of research for this. I'm like, 2008 is ballpark the first year that like Facebook was starting to overtake MySpace, but AIM and MySpace and Top 8 and, flip phones and all this stuff, it is just perfectly captured in this. And not just the technology and stuff like that, and because that's just UI and props and stuff like that, but how they were utilized by people at the time and how they could make you feel like, the devastation of getting removed from someone's top 8 is one of the cruelest like acts of online, things you could do to a friend, right? And I don't know if younger generations will understand that, but I feel like this movie does such a good job of conveying the emotional damage that something like that did without having to be familiar with the platform that is MySpace, right? So I think Isaac, who plays Wang Wang, does a really great job in this. Joan Chen must have the greatest shout out to Joan Chen. She is a legend. She plays his mother, Chung Sing. Shirley Chen, no relation to Joan, plays Vivian, the older sister. Also, Sean's actual grandmother, who stars in Nai Nai and Waipo, is in this, Chang Li Hua, and she plays a grandma again. Cast what you know. She is one of my favorite parts of this film. I know I'm biased because I know I grew up in the Bay, and this is ballpark like the era I grew up in, plus minus. And also, I'm from a Taiwanese American family. Like, this also makes me inclined to potentially be hypercritical of this, because I was like, dude, I lived this. So if you don't get it right, people like me will know, which is why I have to give it so much credit for getting it so right. Ultimately, it is just a film about adolescence, right? I think it's going to go down in history as just one of those great films that capture adolescence, and plot-wise, it's not necessarily about the plot. There are plot points to it, but it's about relationships. It's about what it feels like to grow up. I really loved this film. I think the biggest caution I will have is if you are someone who suffers from secondhand embarrassment at the expense of characters, just know it's about middle schoolers. This is the most prime, like, embarrassing time, and this film pulls no punches when it comes to that stuff. Please go out and see this film. I truly think there's something in it for everyone, even if you are not Taiwanese American, or even if you have nothing to do with like skate culture, or even if you grew up past the era of MySpace, because they do such a good job of capturing the core of family and emotion and friendships. If you have a family, if you have emotions, and if you've had friendships, or any of one of those, there's something in this film for you. I'm going to give it a 4.7 out of 5.